VRNet, the real-world dataset for VR motion sickness research. And this is a collaboration between the National University of Singapore, the University of Auckland, and Meta Reality Labs. So the VR market is estimated to hit about $87 billion of revenue by 2030. And about 40% of that users today feel motion sick when using VR. So there is a clear need for research in this direction, and we need data sets. And why we need data sets is because previous research have shown that VR content is one of the key factors in creating motion sickness. What you see and what you play with is one of the main reasons why you feel sick. So there's a clear need to highlight what of these features are and need to identify motion sickness based on the VR content. And machine learning ambitiously aims to eliminate or reduce the motion sickness using this large data set, and hence we created VRNet. Before creating the data set, we need a toolkit to make the data possible. So for that, you have a few challenges. One, you need access to the developers to stream all this data, which is quite hard. Otherwise, you need to create your own environments and then simulate the data, which is also quite hard, not practically possible. So we created a toolkit, which we published last year in UST conference. I'm not going to talk about the tool as such. The reference is in the paper and it's here. It's a very novel data collection tool that basically intercepts the high-level graphics that goes to the rendering system and dumps it into a file, into a computer that's streamed. So these are the properties of the data set. We have 165 hours of data across 100 different VR games, which are classified into 10 different genres, and more than 500 participants played. Each participant played 2 sessions. And it's quite rich in data labels. We have 24 labels corresponding to the gameplay, all of them at least 30 frames per second. And then the accuracy, since this data set is streamed from a game engine, it's auto-extracted, so it's accurate. This is a comparison between the existing data sets versus VRNet. We have compared it with manually labeled data sets, vision-based and synthetic. VRNet is 100 times bigger than most other data sets, and we have precise information. We have very large or rich data labels. Also, we're quite diverse in the type of games and genres that we used. We used FMS, which is Fast Motion Sickness Scale, instead of the traditional SSQ, Simulator Sickness Questionnaire, because FMS lets you ask the questions how sick you are while the experience is going on, instead of SSQ, which asks after the experience. This is another comparison between VRNet and other data sets. For manual labeling, this is 100 times longer. For deep learning, vision-based data sets are quite prone to noise. This is accurate because it's streamed directly from the game engine. Synthetic data sets are, well, synthetic. This is real world. And we also have information on eye gaze, enhanced and then FMS score, which is the motion sickness score. So how did we select the games? So we took real-world games which were popular at the time in MetaQuest store. MetaQuest analysis, because MetaQuest is the largest data set for the game store that we could find. We compiled a list of 1,410 games last year, and we classified them as using a method called Lucas and Sherry system for systematic classification. What that is it's a method of classifying games based on how they are played and not how they look. We also collected information on the metadata of the games, the description, how motion sick they are labeled in the store and whatnot. The labels are generally classified as 2, graphic labels and interaction labels. Graphic labels would be the camera movement, which includes the movement, the rotation, all of it, field of view, depth of field, motion vectors, and object movement. With the interaction labels, you have the facial expressions, the gaze tracking, and of course, the self-report motion sickness score. So for anyone who are not familiar with Metaverse, this is not part of this study. This is a random video that I took from YouTube for privacy reasons. The link for the YouTube is there. It's a space where people come together and then develop kind of multiple experiences in there. So this is how the experience looks like. We took 10 different genres, so there were games, games classified into 10 different sections, which are detailed in the paper. The collection procedure was we anonymized any personal identity information. 500 participants, which across the University of Singapore, students, staff, faculty, general public. We advertised it online. From the top of my head, the youngest participant was 18 or 19, the oldest was 54. And then each session was 15 minutes. We had at least 12 minutes of gameplay for each session, and every minute you ask the question of how motion sickness feel, and that's the label that we have. We also provided Python scripts for extracting CSV structures. So with the data set, we also proposed a few utilization methods in the paper. One is to have the excessive camera movement detection. Then the other one is object density estimation. But what object density estimation is, there's a couple of papers that looks at flight simulators and people who are flying in VR in flight, and they have more motion sickness when they're flying in lower altitude versus higher altitude. Because lower altitude, you see more objects moving around. Similarly, we can have with this, we have the bounding box of the objects in the game, so we know how big the objects are and how fast they are moving in the scene, which can also be a means of predicting comfort. Then you also have the comfort rating prediction, which is altogether put together as a pipeline for detecting motion sickness factors. So the future works of this plan is to crowdsource and get more data and increase the size of the data set, and have a wider pipeline for more features of motion sickness detection, also for some interplanetary file system implementation for more faster and robust data streaming. One limitation that we had was, even though the tool that we published last year was for Unreal and Unity and all the game engines, we've only used Unity-based games for this one. So in conclusion, what we are presenting is the largest data set that we know of in motion sickness of VR. We are quite diverse in the sense that we have more than 100 games, 10 genres, very rich in labels, 24 labels, of 23 of them are streamed directly from the game engine, and the one we have is the motion sickness scale, so it's quite accurate. And we demonstrated a machine learning pipeline for risk factor detection and comfort rating. So for dataset access, you can mail us at AH Lab or at Meta. We have this link that will have updates on the dataset related information and the citation. And it's a collaboration between different continents, and there's lots of people involved. This is a wider community, including the Meta team. So massive thank you to everyone who worked on this. This includes the people who worked on the VR Hook, the first generation projects. So it's a collaboration between the National University of Singapore, University of Auckland, and Meta Reality Labs. So thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation for the audience.
Also, thank you for the reviewers for the acknowledgement and the best paper award.